for the closed session.
Oh, okay.
All set to go, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, April. I'm probably going to wait for Molly to get back
Yeah.
here.
Good idea.
Okay, we're good to do the bond sale before the closed session.
Thank you.
Yep, I'll send her a Zoom.
Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners to order this Tuesday, November 23rd at 8:31 a.m. Please rise and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we do have an adjustment to the agenda. We'd like to move our bond sale. Where is that? Auditor 7A, I believe. Moving that up to just beyond the consent agenda. So before our closed session, if that's okay with the board. Okay. Are there any other adjustments to the agenda? Doesn't look like it. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as revised.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson support.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. That moves us on to our public comment period. Opportunity for citizens to speak to the county board. Do we have anyone wishing to speak this morning? No? Any written comments to share?
No.
Okay.
I have not received.
Okay. In which case, I'll close the public comment period. And that moves us on to item number 3 on the agenda, consent agenda. Are there any items the commissioner would like to pull from the consent agenda? Commissioner Swalson.
No, not to pull, Mr. Chairman, but point of order. On the Cook County Board of Commissioners special meeting, it states that the meeting lasted approximately over an hour, when in fact it lasted approximately 15 to 20 minutes. With that correction, an agreement to correct the time the meeting ended, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson, for that catch and motion. Is there support?
Support.
Commissioner Hawkins supports. Thank you. Any further discussion there? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
No.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And then that moves us right down to the bond sale there. Auditor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we're trying to connect with Bruce Kimmel right now.
Sorry.
As we speak.
Right, yes.
He's going to phone in.
Okay, he's asleep at the wheel.
No,
Does he have
That's
other
okay.
things on his mind today?
Yeah, no, That wasn't a good
Are we-
pun either
Are
there.
we calling him on his mobile, Brady, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
He sent 651-341.
I got it.
Okay. Yeah, he emailed us last night at about 5:30 or so, and with the results of the sale.
Good morning, Bruce. It's James Yorkie at Cook County. Hey, we've got you on speakerphone, and the meeting is in session, so we are ready to address the bond sale item.
Wonderful. Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, pleased to be with you. And thanks for putting me on the agenda so quickly here this morning. I wanted to just report briefly on the bond sale results, mostly, as well as the credit rating affirmation that was part of this process. We took bids on, I should note that I'm referring to the sale day report that was sent yesterday, and hopefully you have in front of you. We did take bids on the county's behalf yesterday at noon, and as you can see from the competitive sale results, we received 3 bids on the county's behalf, with the winning bid coming from Northland Securities. Their low bid was 1.72%. The high bid was 1.8%. And so very competitive, aggressive bidding between the 3 bids, with only 8 basis points or 0.8% between them. I should also note that the low bid from Northland at 1.72 was roughly 10 basis points lower than what we had projected. So we had, in our pre-sale report that I presented to you a month ago, we had been estimating about 1.82%, and this came in about 10 basis points more, which will mean less interest expense overall over the next 20 years, and less of your TST dollars that need to go to repay the debt service. I will also note that due to the premium bid that was received and the lower amount of underwriter's discount that was taken by Northland as part of their bid, we were able to reduce the bond par amount by $250,000. In other words, the offered amount of bonds was $6,160,000, and we were able to reduce that to $5.91 million. And so that's what is reflected in the resolution that was prepared by Freiberger after yesterday's bond sale. A few other things I'll note. If you go to the bid tabulation page, you can see Northland's bid, followed by Baird and Piper as second and third place bids. And going back to the Northland bid, they were joined by D.A. Davidson and United Bankers Bank as part of their syndicate. So all 3 of those underwriting firms will take some of the bonds for this issuance. And you can see how and why the premium was generated from this bond issue. You can see all 20 of the maturities have coupon rates of 2%, but the actual yields, the true interest costs for the county, range from 0.3% up to 2.05%. And so when you sort of average out the prices that Northland paid for each one of those 20 maturities, that's what generated that additional amount of premium, and what we were able to use to reduce the bond amount while still generating $6 million of proceeds for the highway projects next year. And you can see that on the sources and uses of funds on the 5th page of that sale day report. I know it's a little counterintuitive when you issue only $5.9 million of bonds and you still generate $6 million of proceeds, but that's exactly what's going on here. Mm-hmm. You can see the resized bond amount of $5.91 million, the net reoffering premium of about $222,000, and then the deposit to the construction fund, the underwriter's discount, and the cost of issuance, balancing out the same amount of money. Are there any questions about that before I move on to the debt service and the credit rating report?
Any questions from commissioners?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
So then, really quick, board, you'll see the debt service schedule on the next page. What's important here is that this average debt service of just almost exactly $360,000 a year will be fixed for as long as you want it to be, basically. We do have basically a non-prepayable period that goes until, I believe that we set it at 2031. So you won't be able to prepay for the first 9 years. But then after that, only you will be able to decide whether and when to either prepay any of those bonds or to refinance if market conditions were to allow that. So there's no rate resets that the bond investors can force on you or anything like that. If it makes sense to just pay this as scheduled for the next 20 years, you'll be able to count on that, and only if it's advantageous to the county, you would have the opportunity to refinance or repay or redeem the bonds early, or some portion of the bonds early. So then finally, I would note the rating, and I apologize that wasn't included, but let me touch on that briefly. And Brady, have you shared any of those rating results with the county board? I can just give a brief summary and we can get that to you, but has the board been apprised of the affirmation of the AA rating already?
Not at a meeting, no. I've talked to some people.
Okay. Well, then let me give a brief update. So we had a very conductive or constructive and productive rating discussion with S&P about 2 weeks ago, and here it is. The rating agency S&P did affirm the county's AA rating with flying colors, which is really tremendous, especially for a relatively small rural county like Cook County. And typically, I'll tell you that S&P looks with some trepidation and concern on economies that have a significant reliance on tourism. But you've been able to demonstrate not only that your tourism element of your economy is really strong and growing, but that also your financial management there at the county is so robust that you are in really good position to weather any downturns that might come in that portion of your economy. So between what's actually going on in your economy and also your strong conservative fiscal management, S&P felt that you're really well positioned to ride that wave, but also to weather any disruptions that might occur. So kudos to you as the governing body and also to your team there that's involved with financial management for really threading that needle well and doing the most you can to make sure that you are well situated. I will just give a couple points. They noted your strong tourism-based economy, your strong, stable revenue stream and conservative budgeting assumptions that have led to recurring surpluses and very strong reserves and liquidity. They've noted that you have strong financial management and favorable debt ratios as well. So really, everything went very smoothly. The analyst, I think, really understood what is going on in Cook County, and really no signs of stress on the county's rating. We also know that you're not likely to issue another set of bonds, at least right away, but if you were to do that, it's pretty clear that you would have strong access to the market based on your very strong credit rating. So why don't I stop there and see what other questions you might have about the rating or the bond issue. But I'm really excited that it went so well and that we were able to get even lower rates locked in for the next 20 years, and that you're well situated to fund your highway projects next year.
Thank you, Bruce. Any questions from commissioners? I'm seeing no signs of questions. You answered mine, and in just your last few sentences there. So thank you. The next step, the next step appears to be approving by resolution the issuance.
That's right, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. So I would entertain a motion here.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I move to approve by resolution for the issuance, sale, and delivery of $5.91 million of general obligation transportation sales tax revenue bonds, establishing the terms and form, creating a debt service fund, and awarding the sale.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion here? The one thing that came to my mind when we hear such wonderful news like this is like, oh, we could have went bigger. We could have.
Didn't cross
But-
my mind at all.
Yeah, no, I didn't think so. But I'm very, very grateful and thankful for the work that's been done, the planning that's been done, the financial management that's been done, our community with our push to try to level out tourism for the whole year, and just really impressive. It all fits together and gives us some really great opportunities that we can leverage into the future. So also appreciate just Bruce, you answering the question about what this means for our future bonding once we kind of get a better grasp of other projects that we're hoping to accomplish here. So all in all, just really positive. So.
And I think a thanks to the previous board that approved that transportation sales tax, because that's,
Absolutely.
these are a couple of projects that would be hard to do
Yes,
without it.
and the voters for voting for that as well. Yeah, all around,
And
just
the voters.
bravo. Yeah. Yep.
Yep, and before you all vote, and before Bruce gets off the line, I just want to say thanks to Bruce and the team at Ellers for all its counsel getting us to this point. Really appreciate that.
Here. Thank you, Bruce.
Very professional.
Thank you.
All right. With no further discussion, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. Chair and Board, and I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Bruce. You too.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, now we get to jump back up into item number 4, closed session. And I'll entertain a motion there. Yes, Commissioner Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, I move to close the session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 Subdivision 3, to close it due to attorney-client privilege and discuss legal issues, legal advice, and litigation strategies arising from the current lawsuit filed by Julie Coleman against Cook County.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Lawson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Hey, Kendra, we're just moving locations here. For me.
I had one bad one. Yeah, well, you gotta let them vent.
Yeah.
Morning.
Is this water before the water?
Yeah. Yeah, it's strong water.
Did you get it?
I got it. Not too bad. I'm so lucky that Paul goes out and finds these fancy drink holders for me. It's very nice. Otherwise I would just go with whatever free thing I got.
When I was in grade school, my mom would send like Lipton noodle soup in little thermoses. And so they would be hot when they go in the thermos, and it has a seal on there. Well, then, by the time lunch comes around, they would cool enough that I couldn't open. So every day I'd have to get the janitor, and he'd make a big show of it, and break a sweat and all this. Okay, we are back into our regular meeting. Guess a good summary of our closed meeting is that we are presented with an opportunity to settle the case, and I could entertain a motion here to accept that settlement. Commissioner Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the settlement agreement and release of all claims between Julie Coleman and Cook County as her employer.
Thank you.
Swallowson supports.
We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? It's probably worth noting the settlement amount and the breakdown there. And so what we are able to say is that MCIT is covering $225,000, and then Cook County is covering $125,000. And so that's the one of the big takeaways there, I'd say, that I think is important for everyone to know. Are there other factors that anyone wants to talk about? I guess the only other thing I'd say is that in our discussions in the closed meeting, that a large part of this was about minimizing risk for the county, and that this seemed like an opportunity to really manage that risk and to control it as best we could. As unpleasant as it is, I truly do think that it's in the organization and the community's best interest, this path forward. So Yeah, Attorney Hicken.
I would just recommend that the motion be amended to authorize County Administrator James Yorkie to sign the settlement agreement and release.
Thank you.
So I would amend that to
Okay.
provide
And I-
Administrator Yorker with the opportunity to sign the agreement.
Okay.
And I support it.
Okay, thank you. So we have motion amended and the support amended to include Administrator James Yorkie to be able to sign the release and settlement agreement. Any further discussion? Or that's enough for now. Very good. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That moves us on to item 5, Attorney, 5A.
All right, let me just get situated.
Yes.
So I come to you with a couple of requests that just kind of landed in my lap. Not really legal items, but we were first, what did I list first? The exhibit?
The training.
It's your training time.
So, this summer, Reservation Tribal Council members, Chairman DeShaw and Council Member John Moran, contacted me and asked whether the county would be interested in hosting another training on issues of race and equity to be conducted by John Moran, who, as everyone here knows, has a lot of experience in that field and training and is well respected as a trainer. And this training would be focused on the commissioners as an audience rather than kind of the broader audience that was intended for the training that John Moran did by Zoom last year. Last year when he did that training, I think almost everyone at this table was in attendance in one way or another, but it was by Zoom. And it was before we had Commissioners Swalson, Hawkins, and Sullivan actually sworn in on the board. So I told Bobby and John that I would forward that request on to you and see if it might be worth setting aside ideally half a day. Actually, ideally it would be a full day training, but you know, everyone is aware that your time is limited and you have a lot of business for the county. So Mr. Moran agreed that he could fit it into 4 hours. And I just think this is a good opportunity for our relationship with the band and just for our general knowledge and education and how to be equitable county officials. So asking for the board to set aside that time, that's my request.
And there's no particular date in mind at this point, and I think that's going to be the real trick, is just coordinating, getting us all available. But I think that sounds awesome myself.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable, very generous offer and very valuable for the board. So it looks, I'm sorry?
Sorry. Look out into January, because I think December is really full.
Yeah, I suspect the same thing. Was there any vague date or time frame?
No, I think if we can give just a few options,
Yeah.
maybe three days that might work for the board, then we can probably find one that works for John.
Okay. Well, I think, does that seem like January is our best, a better bet than?
Yeah.
In the new
Maybe
year,
early
whatever
January.
works out in the new year.
Okay, very good. You don't need any any official vote there, just we've got it, all commissioners
Right.
interested and hoping for January there, so. All right, well, how about item number 2 here?
Okay, item number 2 relates to an exhibit that was put together by Smithsonian and Minnesota Indian Affairs Council, funded by the Minnesota Legacy Funds. And I became aware of this exhibit through my studies at the Humphrey School. It's called Treaties Matter. There is a virtual version, which commissioners can look on the website. There is also a physical version. I arranged to have this exhibit displayed at our annual County Attorneys Association meeting down in the Twin Cities, December 1st through the 3rd, and I wanted to present as an option to the commissioners to also display it here in the courthouse or in Cook County. And I would bring the exhibit up. It fits in my back of my small SUV. I think it's about 20 posters that expand to about 6 feet tall and could go throughout the courthouse. I also contacted Bobby DeShaw and RTC staff and they are interested in displaying the exhibit also. The typical duration of the exhibit display is about 30 days. So my idea is that we could split the time with the band. In talking to Commissioner Sullivan about this yesterday, we came up with some alternate ideas about location for a couple of reasons. One of them is COVID related. Do we wish to invite people to come into the courthouse at this time during the current surge? We don't necessarily want to encourage groups to come see it, but it would be good to have school kids see this exhibit. Commissioner Sullivan, I know that you had contacted the school to see if they might be interested. I'm not sure if you've heard.
I
back.
did send an email to Superintendent Lindholm, who happened to be out yesterday.
Okay.
And so he was unable to get back to me, but one of the thoughts was to put the exhibit up in the Arrowhead Center for the Arts, which would make it very convenient for school groups to see it. It would be right there on site. It would be also close by for Great Expectations if they wanted to come up and view it. And then, so I'm hoping to hear back from Superintendent Lindholm, but until that time, I can't make any promises.
So what I might suggest, since it's kind of up in the air, is that the board just maybe authorize use of courthouse space at the discretion of the county administrator for this purpose. And maybe, it occurs to me that school children can see the exhibit if it's in the school, but that actually makes it really difficult for the general public to access it. So maybe we split it 3 ways.
Yeah.
And it goes to the school, and it goes to the courthouse, and it goes up to the reservation.
I think that sounds awesome.
And I think also making the community aware there is that virtual option, so that if people feel uncomfortable coming in person to see it, they still can benefit from the information.
Very good point. Yeah. Yeah, I would have COVID concerns at this time, but if we can do that kind of split between the courthouse and the school, then of course if Grand Portage would like to display it as well, I think. That sounds like a really good way to manage all that.
Great. And then with the board's permission, we would put out some public communication that the exhibit exists and that the virtual exhibit exists, and invite small, individuals or small groups, household groups to come see it here at the courthouse. Something that's relatively safe for transmission.
That sounds great.
Any concerns with that, or questions, or?
Would we want to run our plan because of COVID by public health, just to make sure that they have an opportunity to view that plan?
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, and of course, I would ask just maintenance be involved in the conversation too. Yeah.
Definitely.
No concerns from that. I think they're all been voiced, but thank you, Attorney Hicken, for bringing this forward to us and helping to facilitate that.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for both items this morning. Thank you for all you do.
Well, you're welcome.
There's more than 20 of them.
All right, well, is that sufficient discussion to give direction here? Excellent.
Yes, thank you.
We can move on to item 6, the Assessor Bob Thompson. Good morning. The first item is 6A, request for appraisal services contract.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. So I do have 2 items on the agenda this morning. The first one, I've discussed briefly with Administrator Yorkie. I'm hoping that we can approve a contract to actually have our previous trainee appraiser, who will be on break from school during the perfect time frame, to come up and assist us doing some new construction permit inspections. We typically try and do those from December through mid-January. We're targeting that January 2nd assessment date just to see how far along a project may be. Sometimes they have a foundation down, sometimes it's sealed up, and that's the date we're targeting for our assessed value. So I did include a draft version of a contract. I'm not sure if Attorney Hicken has reviewed it, but it kind of follows the template of the contract we've had in other contract services. So I've just kind of altered or manipulated to specific exactly what we're expecting from the contractor and kind of laid out the fees there. If there's any recommendations for changes, I'm certainly open to it, but other than that, I would just remove the draft watermark and present it to the board chair after the meeting here. So ultimately, the contract would max out at $5,000. It's $25 for new construction, $15 for septic verifications. In my experience, I think that a contractor could probably go out and maybe do somewhere between 10 and 25 of these a day. So at the end of the day, it's not like we're going to be handing out $400 or $500 a day. It's probably going to be more like $200 to $250 a day. That doesn't include any of the mileage. We're not reimbursing for mileage. We're not providing any vehicles. So, and then that also doesn't include the taxes that the contractor would have to remit to the state and federal. So I feel like it's pretty fair. I've talked with a number of other county assessors on when they contract out, and I think that those numbers are pretty fair. We've also added in updating the photos and the digital sketches, so it's not only this field work, there will be a little bit of transferring that data into our computer system. So I would ask for a motion to approve the contract.
Yeah, may I, thank you, Assessor Thompson. May I ask, just for clarification, when it's new construction, does that sometimes include the new septic, or is that, it could be a twofer sometimes?
It does. Typically, they're probably going to have the septic system installed before, but it's not always the case. So I guess I didn't think that part of it through. If there's a double where there's a septic and a new construction, right now, I think under this contract, that would be paid out at $40.
Yeah, I was just asking. You would know better what's involved there, so.
Yeah, sometimes these new construction ones, there are some rather large structures going up, and we don't know, we may have snow on the ground by then, and it can be quite labor intensive to go out and completely measure a large 2-story building on the cliffside of Lake Superior. So, I think it is pretty fair. At the same time, if somebody's doing, maybe they grab 15 septic permits and head up the Gunflint Trail, that's kind of just, I think that those numbers are pretty fair. I suppose if the board prefers, we could address it and reduce the combination fee there.
I don't, I was merely asking, not,
Okay.
didn't have any guidance for you. Any other questions from commissioners here? You spelled it out pretty well for us, thank you. I guess at which point I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would motion to approve the request to contract appraiser services based on the review of our county attorney.
Thank you, Commissioner Salson. I have a motion. Is there support?
Storley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Motion and support. Any further discussion? Just want to, again, thank you, Assessor Thompson, for being proactive with this and making things work just with the turnover we've had and our limited resources. I think this is a really good path forward, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, this will definitely help keep us on track.
Yeah. All right. I'll ask the question. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Assessor Thompson. On to 6B.
All righty. So this is kind of a result of, I think it was a September 14th meeting. There were some questions related to tax capacity, kind of resulting from some value decreases. There were some other factors, but I'm going to be pretty brief with the first 2/3 of this presentation. The information's there. If you want to go back, you can review it and kind of look at the specific numbers. And if anybody does have any questions, they want more explanation on something in particular, you can certainly reach out. I'm more than happy to go over those things. But I will see if I can get this going. So changes to 2021 assessment, kind of some of those things we're building into the CAMA system to fix and address these discrepancies in different property types. And then also one of the commissioners had asked for early projections for the 2022 assessment. So let's go ahead and get right into it. There were reduced market values also resulted in some reduced tax capacities. The reason for those reductions are ultimately because of the sales ratio studies that are done. Department of Revenue requires that any specific aggregate property type has a median ratio between 90 to 105. This next slide you can find at the link there below, and this shows on water, off water, and combined on and off water, that median ratio in all three of those categories for any specific township or unorganized township must be between 90 to 105. So you're looking at it on multiple different levels, and not only do those individual levels have to be between 90 to 105, but the combined aggregates have to be between that 90 to 105. So also, you can't just take the measurement of the median and say, okay, everything's good, because obviously half of everything's higher than that and half of everything's lower than that. So they do this coefficient of dispersion, and that's going to measure the uniformity outside of that median and say, do we have a tight range or do we have a wide range outside, above and below that median? So this is an example in the graph there. You can see 10 or less in a subdivision down in the suburbs is going to be one of the acceptable COD ranges, coefficient of dispersion. When you get into something like our area, you're looking at probably that third line down, rural residential and seasonal recreational residential. That would be the SRR. So they're looking for something around 20 or less on that COD. You can see the highest that's acceptable would be 25 or less. Now the caveat with this is they want 30 sales in any particular study in order to develop this COD and measure that uniformity. Otherwise it's just not considered reliable. So in this screenshot here, this is our early sales ratio study. So this would be before we made adjustments to land valuations last year. You can see residential bare land and seasonal rec bare land are highlighted there, and you can see they're both above 105 in that median ratio. You can see the residential bare land is at 54, so that's a rather high COD. You can see there's only 21 sales there over a couple columns. And then also the rural vacant land, which is less than 34 acres, that was at 103, so it's kind of on the high side. There's 24 sales there. And then I've highlighted on the far right the median sale price and assessed value. I'm going to go just one slide further here. This is showing those particular areas. Each color is a representation of what area the Department of Revenue is studying. And then in those areas, they're studying that on water, off water, and combined. And then each other classification, like commercial, agricultural, those are also studied on their own in these particular areas. So now, this is showing Tofte, Lutzen, and Schroeder broken down before those adjustments. You can see in Tofte, the median ratio is actually acceptable, but if you look just to the left of that, the mean, the average ratio is at 225, which is extremely high. And you can see the coefficient of dispersion there in Tofte was at 128. I mean, it's just way out of line. And then also, if you look at all those vacant lands in both Lutzen and Schroeder, they're all above that 105 acceptable median ratio. So something had to be done here. If we don't make these adjustments, likely the Department of Revenue would do it as a state board ordered adjustment. They're not so specific or targeted with their adjustments. They would typically just use one of these areas and apply that adjustment to everything. Whereas we can apply it specific to, 5-acre parcels, 10-acre parcels. We can be more dialed in with our adjustments than what they would apply. So you can see I've circled those two extremes up there. And this is something we talked about briefly back in April. Is the way this assessment was set up prior was we only had one specific land table for each jurisdiction. So we set these acreage rates. At 1 acre, you can see before it's at 40 to 49,000 in Lutzen, Tofte, Schroeder. 2-acre rate is at 26,000, so a 2-acre parcel would be valued at $52,000. And the problem with this is you just don't get enough detail to say, well, the ski hill is more valuable with their resort commercial zoning than something that's way up off of the grade or off the honeymoon or something like that. So here you can see this is actually what we had set up in the assessment. Each one of these colors represents where we had an acreage rate developed. Based off of the 1, 2, 3, 5-acre, 10-acre, 20-acre rates. So the way we're going to work on this, first we'll talk about making those adjustments down. And after we made the adjustments down, this is the snapshot of the entire county. You can see that residential bare land is now between the 90 to 105. The coefficient of dispersion is still kind of high, but all of the bare land categories are acceptable here. Then on the next screen, this is the breakdown of the townships, and you can see that Tofte Township, that mean ratio is now down to 97, and that coefficient of dispersion is 15. We did a lot more work in Tofte than we did in Lutzen or Schroeder. We actually created a couple of neighborhoods for some of the subdivisions to dial those in a little better. Although it was outside of our quintile, so we were kind of limited to the amount of resources we had. You can see this was actually done March 18th was when we finished and finalized our numbers. And we send those valuation notices out before the end of March. So we were kind of running up against the clock here, but we were able to get all the numbers to work. And it's kind of like, I explain it as like a house of cards. When you get all of the numbers to work, you don't want to mess with it anymore. You think you can do more fine tuning, but it's not wise to do that fine tuning when you get everything adjusted correctly, because then you might see something like your improved properties, which would be the number 1 line on each of these categories. Those could go too low or too high. So we got it dialed in to where we were comfortable, and in the end, this is the email from the State Board of Assessment from the Department of Revenue. This is from my property tax compliance officer. He said, congratulations on the exceptional results of your efforts. In fact, I was told we were one of the few counties that had no state board recommendations last year. So we were pretty proud of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So now we'll get into a couple of specific sales I just wanted to show so that you're understanding why we were reducing values when everybody kind of knew the market was going up. This is a sale in Lutzen, 5 acres. In 2020, the value was $52,000. With all reductions, it went to $39,000 in 2021, and it actually sold at the end of 2019 for $36,000. So it's still over the 105%, that specific sale. Same story with this one. It's another Lutzen sale. We reduced it to $30,000 from $45,000, and it sold for $28,000. This is up in the John Vic Creek plat. So that had a 106% ratio even after going down. It's still too high. Now this is a sale that we're looking at, and we're saying, well, this is on the Ski Hill Road. It's 37 acres that sold for $269,000, and we had it valued at $70,000. And this is the problem we had, is we only had one rate or table that we could use and apply to those properties in the West End. So how do we fix this when you have multiple different rates per acre? Obviously, I can't apply $7,000 at the 40-acre rate. The 40-acre rate is at $1,800. And if I applied $7,000 to try and fix that one sale, I'm going to have a lot of calls next spring. So the plan that I've developed is to create a zone, a table for each zone. So you can see the zoning map there. It's kind of showing the golf course, ski hill in the pink, and then that yellow is kind of up the Caribou Trail. So each of these zones will have their own values per acre rate. So you can see on the right there, it's just an example. If you look at the GC, that's general commercial. You know, if it was $50,000 for 1 acre, that's far higher than the FAR1, the area that's in white, at $29,000 for that first acre. So this is going to help us dial in those values much better. And then also, I showed this at the earlier meeting, the neighborhoods we're creating gives us even another level of detail. This is something I'm drawing up with colored pencils. I'm kind of defining these neighborhoods on my own. You can see the golf course there in orange. The holes are the dark orange. The ski hill is right above that in kind of the light shade of purple. And then the red is like the ski hill outside of those two areas. Mink Ranch is the purple area, if anyone's familiar. Boulder Point Road is that kind of turquoise color. And then along the shore, we've developed a bunch of other neighborhoods that we can adjust independent with those rates. So this is actually what I showed at the other meeting before, where it's just a hand-drawn, and then when it's actually applied into our GIS database, you can see it mirrors it, and now we can go through and fine-tune if one property somehow got missed, didn't get entered into a neighborhood, we can go in and find that. So this is where we're at in the whole county. We've done the greater Grand Marais, and Hovland are east of town. So we're working the West End right now. At the end of this year, we'll have the whole entire West End spread out into different neighborhoods. And then next year, it'll be the Gunflint Trail. We'll create and develop those neighborhoods as well. So this is an example of an assessment record. You can see there's a value there. It's kind of down in the bottom right corner, 48,863. There's the rate per acre there in the big circle. Up at the top, there's no neighborhood. And then the other circle, that V15, is for a view of Lake Superior. So this is when it's updated into the zoning. And you can see we've added the neighborhood, and the value now is quite a bit higher. It's at $70,000. Well, this particular property, in this plat, we have sales, when they have that view of Lake Superior, they range from $80,000 back in 2014 to, $70,000 in 17 and $70,000 in 2021. So this value has gone up, $26,000, but rightfully so. So this one's much more consistent with what the sales of similar properties are by adding that neighborhood in the zoning. This is another similar one. This is in the John Vic Creek. And once we add that neighborhood code, you can see the value is $42,000. Before that, it was $37,000. And this one, it actually sold in 2021 for $44,000. So we're dialing things in much better now with our assessment. And that's going to just improve our ratio numbers. So with the reduced market values, there's a reduced tax capacities, and a lot of that has to do with the short-term rentals that switch from commercial to residential. You can see the commercial rate, anything over 150 is at 2% on that, developing the tax capacity rate, which is then applied to the tax rate. And on residential, it's at 1.25 on all values. So that change kind of shifted some of that tax capacity. On top of that, the fiscal disparities kind of took hold of some of our tax capacity. In fact, in some jurisdictions, commercial properties, we've lost all of our tax capacity on that. It's gone into the fiscal disparity pool. So that was something that kind of came as a surprise in the last assessment for taxes payable 2022. So this, now we get into the more interesting stuff, and I'm going to try and keep it under the next 9 minutes. But this is some of the early numbers, the projections. You can see here in 2021, we had 597 sales. Our study goes from October 1st to September 30th each year. That gives us time to, adjust for January 2nd. It's consistent every year. And then there was only 325 sales in 2020 study, so that's an 84% increase. I was told that's probably the highest in the state. It's definitely the highest in the northeast region of Minnesota. Lake County was sitting right around 49% in their number of sales increased over the last study period. So to put it into perspective, we're significantly higher. I think St. Louis County was looking at something like 20%, and most of the counties down in the Twin Cities or other parts of Minnesota were closer to 20 and 30% increase. So that's an interesting number.
Would you say statewide there is an increase, though? Or?
Statewide, yes. Even in the metro, there's still an increase. The Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, both saw increases in the number of sales as well. So it's kind of just interesting to see how that's happening. A lot of people are probably moving from one location to another, and others are probably, fleeing the nest, I guess I would say, or buying a second property.
Well, I was going to ask, is there anywhere there's a decrease?
Not that I'm aware of. Those numbers will probably come out and be available. Revenue, we just finalized our sales study period on November 10th. So all those numbers were kind of tentative when I was putting this together over the last, that's only 13 days ago when we finalized our numbers. So for them to compile all that, it's probably going to be another couple of weeks. But I imagine they'll issue some kind of a notice or report that'll go out. And I'll share that with you if I ever do find it.
Thank you.
This slide is showing our median price between those two study periods and our average sale price between those two study periods. Now, I've specifically narrowed this down to seasonal, recreational, and residential. So this is going to be basically your homes and your cabins. The median price is up almost 100%. It's 168 in 2020 and 334,000 in 2021. The average is probably a better measure for this perspective. You can see that's up 43% from 273,000 in 2020 to 392,000 in 2021. So quite a jump there in the median and in the average sale price of these properties. The preliminary sales ratio numbers, this is what everybody wants to know about because this is what is going to ultimately decide how much we add in value for the 2022 assessment. Right now, in most of the townships, Grand Marais, Lutz and Tofte Schroeder, and the countywide in general are right around 75%. You can see this here is the same as what we looked at for the 2020 study, but this is showing the countywide. The very top line is the residential class properties. The second line down is the seasonal recreational properties with buildings. Those are both straddling 70%. So that would indicate to me that they should be going up 25 to 30%. At the very bottom, it's all property classes combined, 76%. You can see that I've highlighted the 449 sales. So that's going to be taking those reject sales out, like the foreclosures, the non-marketed sales, splits, relative sales, those types of things. Also, you can see I highlighted the bare land, and you can see we're at 90% and 88% on those with, over 80 sales, almost 90 sales. So that's one of the interesting takeaways here is that bare land, there's some properties that have been on the market for 2-3 years, and they're now just finally selling. They didn't necessarily go up in value. So if you have a bare land property in Lutz in particularly, you may not be seeing an adjustment up at the end of the year, whereas those improved properties will be. I did go a little bit further. This is Tofte Township. You can see the bare land is pretty low. The improved properties are right around 74%. This is for Lutzen. You can see the bare land is almost right where you want it to be on 13 sales, 4 sales. combined ag bear land under the 34 acres is quite low. So that's going to be kind of those bigger parcels with bare land. Those are pretty low, so we're going to have to up some of those higher acreage rates. But overall, combined all property classes, and when you look at the residential seasonal rec, they're right around that 70 to 75% range. So I've got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do next year. This is the city of Grand Marais. You can see here very similar story, 75% on all property classes combined. And again, this information will be available online if you guys want to do further review of the categories and ask them some more questions. But this is just going to try and help people understand that when I raise values across the board, or for the most part across the board, it's going to, it doesn't necessarily mean that the county's collecting more money, and it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's tax bill is going to increase. So if anybody from the public is watching and is interested, these next slides set up some scenarios. Now, this is a hypothetical 4-town operating budget with 4 houses in the town and $4,000 to operate this township. Now, if you cut that budget in half and the values of the properties stayed the same, the taxes go down by half, exactly. So, you know, if it was 4,000 operate, each would pay 4,000. If it was 2,000, each pay 500. Now, this would be if the values of the properties are cut in half, but the budget stays the same, that $4,000. Well, even though your value got cut in half, your taxes still stay the same because it still takes $4,000 to operate this town. Now, we'll get into some more specific scenarios. Let's say we reduce the value of one property, $25,000, and the other property's value stayed the same with that same $4,000 operating budget. Now, the one property is paying less, $800, and the other properties are picking up that tab. So these are good examples of things that can happen. Now, this is particularly something we can expect to happen in this assessment. If you were to change, you can see now the one house is a lakeshore property valued at $200,000, and the other 3 properties are non-lakeshore valued at $100,000. If the lakeshore properties are going up at 20% this year, and the non-lakeshore properties still going up 7%, you can see there that even though their values increased 7%, their taxes went down. I did just pull up the numbers that revenue has given us, and their on-water time trend is 27%. Their off-water time trend is 17%. So what that means is if you had a property you purchased in October of 20, they're applying 27% to that sale price before they compare it to our assessed value to determine that ratio number. If you bought your property in October of 2021, they're adding nothing. So they're just comparing that sale price to our assessed value. So they add it on a monthly basis, and this is very consistent with what we will probably be seeing. Those on-water properties seeing a higher adjustment than the off-water properties. So this is a perfect example of when your value can go up, but your taxes don't. And this just goes into a little bit more detail. The funding remains consistent, and it just shifts that tax burden to operate the entire 4-town township to other taxpayers, or to the lakeshore property in this situation. So now, one of the commissioners has asked about how exempt properties affect tax bills, and this is a slide to represent that. Now, if you remove one of these properties from the tax base and all of their values stay the same, you can see that one property's entire tax burden then shifts to these other 3 properties. So that's kind of an example of when a property is purchased and put into an exempt use and qualifies for exempt status, how it can affect other property owners. Now, the takeaways from this, the class rates are set by the legislature. They say who's eligible for exemptions, and they set basically all of the taxation process. The assessor then determines the market value for each property, and we call that the slice of the pie. then the schools, the townships, the counties, all the taxing authorities determine the size of the pie. You can see that image is the different pie pans there. You could have a bigger pie or a smaller pie. And then the last step is the auditor then apportions the budgets to the values, and that's what's going to determine your tax bill in the end. So that's basically all I really had. I was going to just address that we have 2 new hires, and then, the vacancies have caused us a little bit of backlog of work to do, and that's where the request for the contract work came from. But, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, if you want more detail and more specific stuff, you can certainly reach out and send me an email or reach out by phone. And any of the general public too, if there's questions from them, always feel free to give my office a call. We're happy to go over, information like this.
Thank you, Assessor Thompson. I'd say your work is nothing short of incredible.
Thank you.
I think you did excellent illustrations and examples, and if we can, have this up on the website for the public to view, I think it just breaks it down really nicely. So, and I just love the level of detail that you're doing with the neighborhoods. I think that's a very powerful tool that can enable us to have some flexibility and to address our community's needs here. Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Good morning, Bob.
Morning.
When you say the legislature sets the class rates, that's the Minnesota legislature, right?
Correct, yep.
Okay. Okay. How do you describe from a property across from Lake Superior the value of the view of Lake Superior? What kind of view are you looking at?
Yeah, and that's always so subjective. We do have a lot of sales now where if they have this incredible view with perspective of the lake, 180-degree view, they're clearly selling for more, in some cases up to $300,000. The top of Coyote Ridge just sold. They split it off of a 40-acre parcel, but it's essentially one build site at the top of the mountain there, and it sold for like $300,000, maybe $315,000. There was another one down in Tofty that actually sold a couple years ago for $187,000, one build site on Birch Cliff. So that's kind of the ceiling, is kind of those 2 sales. Those are incredible views. I've been to both those properties, and they're really spectacular. More common, something like on Boulder Ridge, or if you're on Coyote Ridge without the very top view, they've been pretty consistently selling for about $120,000 to $130,000. I mean, we have multiple sales of those types of properties. And when you get down to something where you might have a more seasonal view or restricted by trees, things like that, but if you can catch that glimpse of Lake Superior, they're selling for $75,000 to $80,000, $90,000. And then if you were to go in that very same plat, very much like the Laveau Ridge one that we have valued at $70,000, that's kind of a more restricted seasonal view. If you were to go to a property down the road where there's no view at all of Lake Superior, they're probably selling for $45,000 to $50,000 currently. So we are using the same objective information of using comparable sales to help us identify those views. But if you were paying really close attention, you could see on that Laveau Ridge property, we actually don't have a view factor in the updated record. We've just updated the land value for that plat because pretty much everything in that plat has a view of Lake Superior. So now if we were to come across something where the plat value is representative of a Lake Superior view of some type, and let's say it's the top of the mountain where it has the best view, we can still go in and apply that view factor. And that's really where the expertise of the appraiser comes in, because they want to make sure they're setting it at a value that they can support if the taxpayer were to question it. So, when you're talking like the Birch Cliff or the Coyote Ridge, those are going to be kind of your comparables that set the ceiling, they set the bar for the top end. And then you have your Boulder Point properties that are more typical Lake Superior views, where you're not on the top of the mountain, but you still have a pretty good view, those at about 120,000. And that's totally where your appraiser experience comes in, and knowing the market, knowing the sales that have been occurring, help you when you're going in and setting the information in the CAMA.
Well, we all received our estimated tax in the mail. I would assume everybody's had theirs. I've had a few phone calls. One particular business has gone up over 7,000.
Yep.
So I asked that maybe they call you, because I don't have the details in how that would have happened. So when, I know you go out every 5 years. Would this example be something that was just assessed?
Nope, unfortunately, the West End, in the West End, we are experiencing something we've never experienced before. The fiscal disparity portion, I'm assuming this is a commercial property. The fiscal disparity portion has, what they established down, they apply it, the St. Louis County Auditor's Office is the one who administers the fiscal disparity tax. We had contribution ratios go to 100% in Tofty particularly. That means essentially all of Cook County's tax capacity on that commercial property is gone, and it's gone into the fiscal disparity pool. I was told this is for a number of reasons, one being the short-term rentals. Those added commercial tax capacity in these jurisdictions for just 1 year, but significant amounts of new commercial property. Also, I've heard that the Enbridge pipeline settlements where certain counties have lost commercial tax capacity in these lawsuits from Enbridge, they've now lost commercial tax capacity, so their fiscal disparity contribution ratios are going down. Also, there were some changes to the way power lines are assessed in townships. They used to be applied at the countywide rate, or the township rate, and now they're being applied at the countywide rate, which, you know, Brady can attest that the actual city of Grand Marais tax rate is quite a bit higher than the county's tax rate. So with that, you know, you've had some townships in other parts of the Iron Range losing tax capacity due to those changes. I think those were also a result of a tax court case. But with all these contributing factors, I'm aware of some properties where Cook County had collected $18,000 in 2021, and we will collect $0 on that property in 2022. It's all shifting to the fiscal disparities. And the fiscal disparity portion, in some cases, I think the particular property, if it's the one I'm thinking of, their fiscal disparity portion went from like $3,000 to like $7,000. So they're seeing quite a bit of an increase on their tax bill. Yeah. And each taxing UTA, the specific taxing authority areas are different. It all depends on what their fiscal disparity contribution ratio is. It's something that's so foreign to both Brady and I mean, this formula, it's a spreadsheet with 8 different sheets, and each sheet affects the other. It takes into account population, jurisdictions, fiscal capacity, net tax capacity, commercial growth since our base year. It's a very complex system. But what I did confirm with St. Louis County Auditor is that this is a 1-year thing. This won't apply next year. Our ratios will go back to normal after this payable 2022.
Just to add a little perspective, in the legislation, it assumes it's capturing 40% of the growth from 1995 to now. But because of the way the formulas work, Bob said 100% in some UTAs. Well, 40 is what you're supposed to. That's typically you'll see 35, 43. It's going to vary in normal ranges, but because of that shift in our case, because of those non-residential, that shift between there to commercial and then going back, et cetera, that big swing just kicked this whole thing out of normalcy for 1 year. And part of that problem is that they use 2 different years when they do this contribution ratio. It's using like 20 and 21 valuations. So you're comparing not the same year. You're comparing a year when there was not a lot of commercial to a year when you had a big switch. And then next year you'll be beyond that big swing, and it'll go back to normal. So, if that helps at all.
Well, and I think Assessor Thompson actually brought this up as a potential problem when we were talking about trying to get short-term rental classification because of the timing of things. The legislature wasn't applying it to that year, and so that's exactly what happened, and then we have this swing. But that's really good to know it's the 1 year. But the businesses that are affected, it still affects them. And all that being said, next year, who the rest of the area is going to feel that the aftershock of that swing from ours, I'm assuming, right? Like,
That's right, Mr. Chair. From what I understand, we will get that tax capacity back when it goes back to a more normal level. And in fact, that could have kind of an opposite effect as what it's having on these commercial properties. It's going to be similar to when we changed all these to residential in the first place and we gained all that additional tax capacity. That will be coming back. So there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel, but yeah, like you said, this 1 year, it's hard to swallow. I've heard from at least one taxpayer who is going to be reaching out to their representatives, that the lawmakers down in St. Paul. I did kind of give my thoughts on that this may be too late in the game to be addressed. There are probably 8 or 9 counties that are involved. They've all set their preliminary levies. They've all sent out tax estimates, and it's kind of late in the game to change all that. But yes, you are correct. We had been discussing this all the way back to 2018, 2019. In fact, I wrote an article about fiscal disparities for the County Connections back in 2019 about this, and kind of just seeing that the writing might be on the wall, that if these properties went commercial, it could have an impact that may not be foreseen necessarily by the everyone.
yep.
Right.
Yes, Commissioner Starley, please.
And the legislature sets that every year?
As far as the fiscal disparity
Well,
portion,
the class rates and all of that.
so they adjust, occasionally they'll adjust class rates. Actually, commercial just got adjusted for payable 2022. Now that first tier it used to be 100,000, it goes up to 150. I think they've also made some adjustments to the 4D class, which is low-income housing. So, they don't reset everyone or adjust everyone every year, but they do occasionally, when there's a need brought up, they'll address and adjust those class rates.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did Commissioner Storley want to?
I don't think so.
Oh,
No,
okay.
go ahead, please.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Bob for the presentation, and to both Bob and his staff for the great work they're doing. This is tremendously complicated stuff. It can be a very thankless job when TNT notices come out and people see their assessments, and especially given the situation that we were just talking about, where fiscal disparities has driven large increases on some taxpayers' bills. That they have concerns and they want to talk to somebody about it. And Bob and his staff are the ones who field those calls. And just want to say thanks, Bob, for your good work, and really appreciate the high level of work that you and your staff are doing. It serves us all very well. So thank you.
Thank you. I have to give a big thanks to my staff as well.
Oh, excellent. Thank you again. Very good work. And I'm looking forward to a very exciting Truth in Taxation.
Yeah, it might be interesting. I had a couple of calls so far, but it's not too bad. I mean, there's been a couple of these fiscal disparity related calls and other calls related to value, but we're able to answer those concerns, the best we can. And thank you to all of you guys, and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Everybody drive safe who's traveling.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we'll move on to item 7B, under Auditor, the temporary hire of K. Burkett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I put this on as a request for approval. I didn't realize that, I thought the process had changed and that we were approving temporary hires, but I understand now that hasn't changed.
Excuse me.
As in the past, it's really department head's discretion for short-term temporary hires. So this is information, basically. Kay Burkett just approved her resignation, And she's offered to stay, she's mostly remote, and do our payroll until we get someone hired and trained. So we're very grateful for that. There's no requirement to do that, so. So I've calculated a rate, based on her last salary and some portion of her benefits that she's no longer earning, obviously, as a temporary employee, and which she didn't ask for any extra, but and it'll be very minimal. She's just simply doing the payroll, which she can mostly do from home and come in and print checks. The rest of the staff has picked up the other duties, the licensing, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's just basically information.
Okay, well, thank you.
And we are very grateful to Kay for her willingness
Yes.
to do that.
Yeah,
She's starting a new job, and a lot of pressure there, and she's just, as we know, she's a worker. So
Yeah, yeah.
she's just absorbing this. So.
yeah. Very, very grateful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Brady, and yes, thank you, Kay, as well. Well, let's move on to item 7C then, please.
So this is a presentation of the airport budget, and Chairman John Barton is here also to answer any questions. So as they submit a budget, as does all departments in the summer of the year, and this is something we could present a little earlier, but things, as usual, kind of pile up. So, but we got it on eventually. So it's actually a fairly simple, routine budget. If you look, and if you went back a number of years, it's going to look very similar, even though there's a lot of large projects going on at the airport, including a runway extension for a number of years. And the reason it looks fairly routine is that those big project costs are primarily covered by state and federal money. That FAA covers 90% of most projects, and the state will then cover 5%, with the last 5% being the local cost. In the case of these large projects like the runway, even our 5% is pretty large. So then we reach out to other entities, typically IRRB, to get some help to try and keep our costs at this very standard budget that you see in front of you. The largest costs there typically are just the operations. You can see about 148,000 for operation expense, 145, 148, and then that's covered largely by a MnDOT maintenance grant, operations grant, 46,000, and some hangar rentals and lot leases and things of that nature. I'll just leave it to questions, and if John has any comments.
Just here to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Do we have any questions for Auditor Powers or for John? Commissioner Hawkins, please.
Yeah, so for COVID, the airport got money. They got 30,000, and then I think just recently there was another 20,000, and I'm curious to know how the airport is spending the COVID-related money.
It's an interesting question. It comes off the top now, the way the state has asked us to spend operations and maintenance funds, that they want us to spend all the federal money first, and then we get into the state allocation. So it goes into the pot, and that money comes out first. In a normal course of business, it's not a remarkable thing. It's just that the pot got bigger because of the COVID grants that were given.
So it's being used for current operating expenses?
Operating and maintenance, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, the 30,000, they just amended the maintenance grant and added it in. And it's getting paid out the same way as the maintenance grant. That one. This new one's a little bit different.
So that's what I was wondering about. So then you're not using all levy money for current operating expenses, and what is the plan for that then?
What's the plan for the levy money then?
Yes.
It becomes available for use for other things if the need happens. Our future vision and the budget, the projects that we do are fluctuate every year, are not really reflected in the budget. It's dependent on the actual projects that we forward and get grants for. So
I'll give you an
Yeah, and,
example.
yeah,
would
that's
be-
what I wanted to know. I guess I didn't word it really well, sorry. I wanted to know what are the projects that's on the, on your agenda that you
On
say,
the agenda
this
going
is what
forward."
we're working on in the next year. This is
Sure.
what we need it for.
You've heard of the capital improvement program. I don't know whether we got you a list of those projects. Did we?
Not the update.
No, we haven't. This gets a little bit complicated, and I don't want to make this harder than it needs to be, but we have recently, because of the runway expansion and widening and so on, we changed category for the airport from just a regular general aviation airport to a key system airport in the state, and that was driven by the length of the runway, necessitated by the emergency services that we need to provide here in the county. But that change in runway length to accommodate our mission triggers things at the state level for requirements for the physical airport itself, which has not been determined yet. We're in the middle of a new, what's called the SASP, the State Airport System Program, and that's the state's look at the airport and how to provide aviation services to the state. Under the old system, we would need to have parallel taxiways and other things that we don't currently have, maybe fencing, depending on the actual categories. That's all under study right now by the state, so it's not been determined. They're talking about key systems airports being split into two segments. One, commercial services. We're not a commercial service airport, although we have commercial services. We have charter and so on, but we don't have a scheduled airline service at the airport. They're talking about dividing key systems into two things, and they're trying to determine what kind of physical structure we need at each one of those designations, and they haven't done that yet. And that's been in the process for about 4 years. And the COVID pandemic, we haven't had a state conference in 2 years now, and it's still in quite a bit of flux. That doesn't mean we don't have what we think we need. And one of the things we need to do right away is to do a airport layout plan update. That's a federal requirement that describes what the airport is and what we think it's going to look like in the future. That's going to include taxiway widening, ramp expansion, parallel taxiway improvements in where the fuel farm, fuel storage is, those kinds of things that we know that going forward in the next 30 years we're going to need to be able to do to provide an infrastructure base for whatever happens in the county, in particular growth. So we know those things are going to come. So we are planning on putting those into plan. Whether or not they're going to be funded, supported by the state and the federal government, depends on how that SASP program turns out. One thing we know coming up is the airport layout plan needs to be redone to reflect the as-built character of the airport with the extension of the runway. And our near future programs like widening the taxiway to access the developable what we call airside area of the airport where we can have hangars and so forth. We know that's going to come. We have that in our planning process. Will be integrated into the airport layout plan and then become the subject of grant seeking. Some of that money that's in our budget will be used for the groundwork for that. Not these things like upgrading the airport layout plan. That's a $250,000 project requiring the engineering and the drawing and all this kind of stuff. That's done by grants generally, but our general operations and time spent, very minimal fluctuations year to year in our actual budget that you see there. I hope that was complex enough to confuse you.
I really
And limit further questions.
I really appreciate the update. I was trying to read the airport minutes, and it's like, really don't know what's happening up there, so I appreciate you making the effort to be here and talk about it and give me background information that I need, so thank you.
Sure, anytime.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the question. It does really, and your answer really does get us all up to speed on what's going on. It's very exciting, and I think really good planning is underway. So thank you for your work.
We're excited. We've got other projects going on that you'll hear about as we go along.
Excellent.
And just to the one point, just an example of one where it isn't covered 90%, 5%, was the arrival departure building. So we needed additional funds to do that project because they don't fund that to that level. And that's where if you do have some fund balance, like we did generate fund balance when they redid the road past the airport, we had to pay the federal government right-of-way fees for using that land along there because it's federal. But they said, keep the money, but you have to use it on projects. So that's another example of extra money to do the projects. So,
Yeah,
including a fund balance from
Yeah.
COVID.
that's helpful. Any other questions? Well, then I'll entertain a motion here. Yes,
I'll make
please.
the motion to approve the Cook County Airport 2022 budget request.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sullivan
Go
supports.
ahead.
There's lots of support. Commissioner Sullivan supports. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Barton. Have a wonderful day. This brings us on to 7D, Fire Department budgets.
Mr. Chair, so these are the fire department budgets for unorganized areas of the county. Lutz, Tofty, Schroeder have their own areas and their own budgets, and so does Grand Marais. But on here, you will see Grand Marais and Lutzen because their fire departments cover parts of the unorganized areas around the city and the town, and we have formulas by which they figure out the county share for the unorganized territories. But the other ones, Colville, Gunflint, Hovland, and Maple Hill, are they're their own fire departments, volunteer fire departments that we contract with to do that service. You can see the total proposed fire levies for 2022, $356,586, just slightly over last year, $355,787. So most of them, very little change. Hovland went up 4,000. That was the biggest single change. And just for other interesting background, these always show up on the county line. They're considered a county tax, but they vary. You know, if you're in the Maple Hill district, and your friend is across the street in a different fire district, and you have the exact same value of a house or whatever, your taxes are going to be slightly different because the two fire districts are a little bit different. But they don't show up anywhere on your tax statement, so just a small anomaly.
Good
there.
explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Auditor Powers. Any questions for Brady here?
I just,
Please.
so the proposed Lutzen extension was 33,229, but the paperwork on page 146 shows 2021, so I just want to verify that there is a reduction there from 2021, correct?
Well, I may have just not, let's see.
Yep, that's a reduction.
But I just want to make sure it wasn't, it's supposed to be 38, because that was what was, so I'm assuming it was just that.
Yeah, I gave you the wrong year
Okay.
in the detail there. So that was 2021, sorry.
All right, so it is the 33 and that's.
Yeah, it is. And you could see that also from Lutzen, they reduced their levy from the previous year, so.
And I would just like to give a shout out. I have no idea who the bookkeeper of the Maple Hill Community Fire Department is, but I love the way you presented a budget. That is the way a budget should be presented, I think, in my opinion, as somebody who likes to look at budgets. I like that layout. Good job.
Kathy Sullivan.
Is that who it is?
Yeah,
What was that?
I believe it's Kathy Sullivan.
Oh, bravo.
Yes.
Very good. Any other questions here? Else, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I move to approve the fire department levies for 2022.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Auditor Powers. Moving on to 7E, MCIT voting delegates.
Yeah, so MCAT needs our voting delegates for the annual meeting on December 6th, and they send out what the information they had from the previous year, and they still had Ginny Storley as the voting delegate, Robert Deschamps as the alternate, so we would need to send them, an updated alternate, or any change you guys decide, but if you kept it the same, I was just suggesting typically it just passes on to the next holder, and if it did, then it would be
Commissioner
Bob
Swalson.
I'm fine with that. I don't have a problem.
Great.
Yeah. And, great. Thank you for being willing.
Certainly.
Any questions, concerns from commissioners?
Did we note the annual meeting looks like it's on the same day as the AMC?
Yep.
Yeah, it is
It is
part
there.
of that
Yeah.
meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. All right.
Doesn't require an additional trip or anything. I'm
Good.
already going to be there.
Bada bing. All right,
Do we want to designate an alternate?
well, wait, you are the alternate.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So yes,
Okay.
we do.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Storley is our voting delegate,
Got
and
it.
then
And then I'll be on as the alternate.
that would be wonderful. Yep.
Perfect.
And I'll make the motion to delegate Commissioner Storley and Commissioner Swalson as alternate for MCIT. Is there support?
Hawkins support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Very good. Moving on to item 8, Administrator. 8A is Administrator Updates. Administrator
All
Robley.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there are several things. I don't have anything for action today, but I did want to give you some information. And actually, there is something that could require action if you agree to do it. Looking at the meeting calendar for December, of course, we have Truth and Taxation scheduled for December 9th. Our first regular business meeting in December would be on Tuesday, the 14th. The second regular business meeting would fall on the 28th, which is between Christmas and New Year's. And I wanted to just bring that to your attention and to suggest that perhaps we make December 21st, which is scheduled for Committee of the Whole meeting, turn that into a regular business meeting in the event that we need to conduct business. My concern is that with Truth and Taxation being on the 9th, if there are any hiccups in getting the final budget and levy approved on the 14th, it would be very nice to have a backup date if there's any kind of legwork that we would need to do before the final approval of the budget and levy. So that's the proposal that I would like to make.
I have just one thing, I think, to point out is that unfortunately it won't be a regular meeting. It will have to be a special meeting.
Right.
And when it's a special meeting, we need to set an agenda and stick to that agenda. So, and we have to do that within 72 hours. But whereas in regular board meetings, we have some flexibility to add this or that as we go. That just won't be the case there. So just want to put that on your radar. But otherwise, I think that's a really good plan. Do other people have thoughts or concerns?
I think it's a really excellent idea.
Okay. Does it make sense to everybody? Yeah. So the committee, the whole time slot will be a special meeting. A just in case special meeting, basically, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
And there may be, yeah. Okay. Well, so yes, that would take board action then. I'll make a motion to hold a special meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners on December 21st at 10:30 a.m. Unfortunately, I don't know what our agenda would be at this point, so this gets into a little technical difficulty as I'm making the motion.
And James, you brought this up because,
we only have one business meeting. I mean, if we don't hold the meeting on the 28th, which I think we probably should not, because I assume many of us will be away, it would be nice to have a second meeting lined up to follow the first regular business meeting, so that if we have a need for board action on anything, that we would have that opportunity.
Okay. Well,
Would that agenda be set like the week before?
yeah, I think I should withdraw my motion, and we'll hold this off until the 14th.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay. And then hopefully we'll know what needs to be on that
Right.
agenda, or
Fair enough.
yeah.
Okay.
well, we would have one topic like the levy, perhaps. We need to
Possibly.
really be thinking that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have some unfinished business with folks who's made requests, so, anyway, we can work
Yeah.
on that,
On the 14th, we'll know more.
yeah.
And then we can still, I mean, if that meeting is approved to be held by the board at the meeting on the 14th, we would still have adequate time to notice it? Is there a 10-day notice? That's just for hearings.
It's a 3-day.
What times are we saying you're not going to have a board meeting on the 28th?
Correct. The intention is to not have a board meeting on the 28th. I withdrew my motion for a special meeting on the 21st because I believe we need to set the agenda when I make the motion. But we'll hopefully make that that motion on the 14th. And I think we just need 3 days
Okay.
for a special meeting. So as long as it can get into the paper in time.
A special meeting doesn't have to go with the papers or public notices or public hearings.
Okay, thank you.
So special notice, it would be the regular time for them, what our regular meetings would be.
Okay.
All right? So 72 hours notice it is.
Correct.
So Okay.
Okay. Go team.
All right. Sorry for the confusion there, but again, I just,
We're all with you.
yeah, just want to make sure that we're, you know, if there are any hiccups on the 14th, that we have another opportunity to finish things up. So, all right, very good. Well, the next thing on my list is just wanted to make you all aware that the county's negotiating team, consisting of myself, Commissioners Paulson and Mills, have been having follow-up meetings with our 3 collective bargaining units. Those conversations are ongoing, and that's been taking up a bit of time just in terms of reviewing proposals, making counter proposals, et cetera. So that process is ongoing. Minnesota OSHA has issued information regarding the emergency temporary standard for COVID vaccination and testing. I don't want to say a lot about this right now because we're still working on a policy, but I have gotten some staff concerns about this and want to make it very clear that the requirement that we are subject to provides for either vaccination or testing. So for staff who are not yet vaccinated, there will be an option to test once every 7 days to meet the requirement of the ETS. We are going to have a policy around that will ask for this board's approval on December 14th, and are working with public health to set up a testing protocol, get a location, everything, so that we'll have a process in place when we have to start meeting that requirement, which may be as early as January. The other thing to mention about the emergency temporary standard is that, of course, it's being litigated. There have been lawsuits filed in a number of states. All of those have been aggregated in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. And so it's not clear how soon there might be a resolution to that. And you know, the verdict rendered by the Sixth Circuit Court could then move on to a higher court, the Supreme Court. So a lot remains to be seen. So the timeline is uncertain at this point. The way the federal guidance was written, the policy would have to be in place by December and a testing program by January. But again, with the litigation going on, I would expect that those deadlines might be moved back. But we're moving forward in the event that there are no changes. So quite a bit of work going on that, both with our Human Resources Director, our Public Health staff, and the County Attorney. The other thing I wanted to update you on is that I have been holding a series of listening sessions with staff around the topic of burnout. And this was triggered by the high number of vacancies that we have currently. We are up to a dozen vacancies. And it's clear that, you know, people are having to do extra work to make up for those openings that have yet to be filled. And the other thing is we just have the ongoing fatigue that people are experiencing related to the pandemic. And so it's created really challenging working conditions. And you've probably heard about the Great Resignation, which is happening in job markets all across the country and all different sectors of the economy, where people are really, there's a lot of churn going on. And that always raises concerns about, you know, the burden that is being placed on staff who are left behind. And the purpose of the listening sessions was really just to check in with folks to see how much burnout are they experiencing. And I'm sorry to report it's a pretty high level. It's been pretty overwhelming at times to listen to folks' accounts of their experiences in trying to work through this difficult period. I've had staff say to me, you know, there was a point this summer where I was looking for another job because I just felt like I couldn't keep up with this, and I wanted something that was simpler, that I could just, you know, leave at the end of the day and not have to think about. So, you know, from a leadership perspective, it's very concerning to hear those kinds of stories. And it's really raised my awareness that we need to be thinking very creatively about how we can prevent burnout, how we can provide some kind of relief valve for staff when they do start feeling burned out, and to think creatively about how to do that. And there are a number of ways that we are talking about. Could be a change in hours of operation. A number of staff said, it'd be really great if we had a 4-day work week. That's a big can of worms to open. But I think we need to be talking about how creative scheduling can help relieve burnout, because frankly, if we're not effective in addressing this issue, we're going to have bigger problems than just a few vacancies. So that conversation is ongoing, and I do plan to take this conversation, feedback I've gotten, to the Personnel Committee and the Benefits Committee, so we can start talking about how should this inform policies around employment and benefits. And I expect there will be more, probably not at the December meeting, but I would expect in January to come back with some additional information and possibly the beginning of some recommendations that we could consider to address this challenge. So, more to come. The other thing I wanted to note is we did have the first meeting of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority on November 17th. It was a very good discussion. We had 4 members of the board in attendance. We had one member who was out of town, but they did elect a chair, vice chair, and a secretary. I will be providing sort of staff support for that group for the foreseeable future until they get an executive director on board. One of the big things on their agenda, of course, is finalizing a job description so that they can begin recruitment for the executive director. They also approved bylaws, so they do have a set of rules that they're operating under. And the next few months are just going to be focused on getting that staff person in place so that they can begin their work in earnest. That person will have the responsibility of beginning a community process to develop a county housing strategy. Lots of ideas around that. This is not about any single topic in housing. It's not just about affordable workforce housing. It's about housing for our sizable population of seniors, folks who have disabilities, the broad diversity of people who live in Cook County. And it's not just about single-family homes. It's also about multifamily housing, including condos, apartments, etc. There's just a whole range of things that we need to be thinking about to address the county's housing challenges. And so that development of the housing strategy is going to be a really important early product of that process. So more to come. The HRA will be meeting on a monthly basis for the foreseeable future while it gets up and running, and the next meeting is scheduled for December 15th. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up is we have gotten some more information from the Association of Minnesota Counties about the Attorney General's participation in the national opioid settlement. This board did approve the county's participation in that settlement. I learned subsequently, however, that there's a resolution that the board needs to pass to enable us to sign in or to opt into the program. And so that will also be on the agenda on December 14th. And that will, again, allow us to formally opt in and participate in whatever state, whatever monies the state receives from the national settlement. That's a lot, and that's what I have for now. Any questions?
December 14th will be
A busy day.
a busy one, yeah.
Bring your coffee.
Yeah. We may need a December 21st, huh? Any other wisecracks from anybody or questions? Thank you, Administrator Yorkie. A lot going on. I certainly want to stay on top of employee well-being, and that includes your well-being as well. So I hope you're not getting burned out, because we need you as much as everyone else too. So.
I appreciate that. There's a lot going on, but I'm really grateful to be in this role and grateful for the awesome team that we have here at the county. We have so many great staff, good departmental leadership, and of course we have, and this will sound like shameless flattery, but we have a very good board, and that all makes my job a lot easier. So really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, we appreciate you for sure. Well, I guess we can move on to item 9, employee concerns, commissioner concerns. Commissioner reports or meeting updates. Any reports or meeting updates from commissioners? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Last week I attended the Arrowhead counties, which is the 9 counties in northeastern Minnesota. And John Ongaro is going to give us the little voting thing, a little voting for the legislature. It's not going to go to our AMC, but it'll be presented at the legislature because John is our representative in the northeastern Minnesota. And when he gets that together, I will have it forwarded to all of us. And there's about 6 different areas. You know, it goes into PILT again. Do we think that's important? We graded 1 to 5. But then we submit our decision as one whole group, not as 5 individuals. So that'll be coming up hopefully by the 14th. One more thing.
Great. Very good, thank you. Any other reports or meeting updates from commissioners? Not hearing or seeing any, so we'll move on to item 9B, meetings to note. We have the AMC annual, I do want to back up. Chairman DeShaw and I are hoping to get the whole board together to do a signing ceremony for the transfer of the road up in Portage. And, getting all of us together I know is a challenge, but I wanted to put it out there that we're trying to do this. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the whole board, but it would be good to notice and post so that we all could try to be there. Yep. But I don't have a date in mind yet. Hoping, I know it's one more thing on Administrator Yorkie's plate, but I'm hoping he can help facilitate that, or perhaps we can have April facilitate scheduling, or I don't know how best to navigate.
I was going to say, we all know who does the heavy lifting.
Yep, and I think that would be wonderful if we could get as many of us there as possible, and it would be up in Grand Portage, and I just think it's a really great opportunity that I would like all of us to participate in. So a doodle poll, or I don't know what your magic is there, April, but hopefully we can knock that out. But then moving on to item 9B, meetings to note. We have the annual conference and the Truth in Taxation, and then the Community Leadership Committee, which I'm not sure if I'll be able to make that December 16th meeting. I believe that's when I have my booster scheduled, so we'll see. I guess you
See
feel
how you're
it,
feeling.
but yeah, we'll see.
I have mine scheduled that day too.
We'll be booster buddies.
And I'm going to be there leading that meeting, so.
You will be there? Oh, you're leading it?
Yeah, so
So it looks
Well,
like it's
hopefully-
bad if
I
you're
hope
not
I'm
there,
feeling
Dave.
okay.
I mean, we won't talk about you if you don't make it.
All right.
Or judge me.
We'll judge you, but
Very good. All right, moving on to item 10, correspondence and memos. We have the sales tax report, which again is very strong. Always leaves a very strong impression on me too. But it's a healthy increase there. And then we also have the Historical Society board packet, which I always appreciate having those in our agenda, and very exciting things happen at the Historical Society. So. And then item 11, recognition of staff new hires. Art Smolecki of MIS Radio Communications Analyst. So thank you, Art, for joining the team. Much needed position, very important for our public safety in first responders in Cook County. And it's a very bright side when we're hearing about a lot of churn to have a new hire. So I just really appreciate Art joining the team here. And otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Motion and support. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you. Have a wonderful holiday.
You too.
You too?
Yeah.